Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a rocky mountain high, get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners, and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. I actually said it without an accent, but did you hear that little slight stutter I did? Today is Saturday, April 17th. Sunday, April 18th, for those of you across the pond and beyond. Welcome to We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I am so glad you guys can join us tonight. If you're listening live right now, you're listening on Spreaker.com as well as KPNL Radio, which you can find on kpnl-db.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Tumblr, YouTube, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, Deezer, Podcast Addict, and man, I've been working on the Twitch and Restream.io and the Facebook and the Periscope and the Twitters, and the Periscope turns into the Twitters, and then it's just like all flibberty gibbered. It's all messed up. Been working hard on it. Can't seem to get it to work, but it's not for a lack of trying. So you guys hang in there. We're eventually going to get video going, even if I have to do just like a cell phone live sort of thing. But I have a treat tonight for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight we will be talking to and getting to know Mr. Steve Stockton. And he is an author. He's written many amazing books. He's doing so many different shows. I can't believe how many shows he does. How does this guy do it? I'm just doing this one show and homeschooling during the week, and I can't even stay above water. But from his early years, Steve Stockton has had what can be called strange and oftentimes frightening experiences with the paranormal to search for the and unexplained. These encounters led to him searching for answers, only to discover the truth isn't easy to find, and that is true. And then going back to the shows, he does Ghost Stories at midnight. That's 7 nights a week. Morning Chill, Monday through Friday, occasionally Saturdays. Campfire Stories, almost every Friday or Saturday. Fireside Chat on Sundays. Electro Swing Set, Saturday morning. Oh my gosh, I just listened to a show this morning that you had sent me, and it was like 1920s era, and I don't know if it's a past life or what, but I love that sort of music. And it was not only that sort of music, but it had some newer sort of mix in it. It was interesting. Old Time Radio, Sunday morning and afternoon. Ritual Radio, Sunday night. And he also engineers and simulcast streams on KPNL for Spaced Out Radio, Monday through Fridays. Our show, Saturdays and Sundays, and a lot of us being on Sundays is thanks to Mr. Steve, because he put in a good word for us. I don't know why, but I appreciate it. And Beyond the Tinfoil Hat on Thursdays, and he narrates all the videos on missing persons and mysteries. He also writes and does radio and voiceover work, and he does sound design for film and TV. He says he likes to stay a little busy. I would say a lot busy. What are you trying to do to yourself? Like, take yourself to an early grave, or do you think this is going to keep you going for the long haul?
That's going to keep me going. As long as I've got something to do, then I'm not going anywhere. I feel tired, though, just listening to all that.
Oh, yeah. And there's more, too. You're like, oh, and I forgot. Gemma and I do a true crime show called Real Evil once a week on DeZombified's channel. And you write and produce for other people's YouTube channels, Unicorpse Tales, the Britain's Most Haunted series, and you wrote and produced for her among your favorites. Yeah, now I feel tired.
Well, one thing, I'm a lifelong insomniac. I sleep maybe 2 or 3 hours every period of 24. So that's afforded me basically to be able to cram 3 lifetimes into to mine so far. I've always been that way. I've just learned to use it to my advantage. I don't get tired. I'm not sleepy. I'll do something. So there you go.
Yeah, it's like as long as you're doing something, you feel fine. If you're sitting there with nothing to do, then that's when the tiredness comes in.
Yeah, or I get into trouble. I get bored and decide to liven things up, because I'm a little bit of a prankster, and that can get me in trouble sometimes. So it's better to keep me occupied, keep me off the streets.
Well, and I think a lot of that goes back to the good old days. We only had so many things to keep us busy. Grandma and grandpa or mom and dad, whoever, sent us outside to play all day. We'd only come in for lunch and dinner and stay, after dinner. But otherwise, you had to keep yourself busy with whatever you could figure out to do.
Yeah, lived out in the country and had to make my own fun and entertain myself most of the time. We didn't have any near neighbors for most of my childhood, so there you go.
Did you guys have a party line? We had a party line at my granny's house.
The very first phone that I can remember, we were on a party line. But then after that, I used to have fun. I'd listen to the neighbors on the party line and get on there and spin the dial while they were trying to talk and just stuff like that. I was 3-4 years old.
That's funny.
That was the way you got all the gossip. You just quietly picked up and listened to what all was being said on the party line. We were only on with, I think, 2 or 3 other people, 2 or 3 other houses, but...
Well, yeah, and still being out in the boonies like that.
Yeah,
being out in the boonies like that, like 2 or 3 people on the line is a lot. And I was, I think, 6 to 8 when I stayed at my granny's house, maybe 6 to 7.5. And that was one of the things we'd do. Like, occasionally we'd come in when grandma or grandpa wasn't in the living room watching Wheel of Fortune or whatever and pick up the phone and see who's talking. And it was always like Bertha or somebody. Like, you could not get that lady off the phone, and she's always on there clucking away, talking about all the neighborhood gossip.
And you had to learn your ring, too. Like, ours was like 2 shorts and long or something like that, because if you didn't know what your ring was, you'd pick it up for the wrong person.
Oh my goodness! I was so young, I didn't even realize that part.
Yeah, you had to know your distinctive ring, and that was only when you could pick it up. Although I'd pick it up whenever I felt like it.
Right? Oops, sorry, Grandma. Or sorry, Mom. Man, there's so many stories going back to those days, and I know for me, like, I was in an era, even though it was in the 80s. For you, it was further back, but I was in the era because I was living at my granny's house for a while after my mom was killed by a drunk driver, and we were living with her. It takes you back. You have to go outside, make your own fun. We'd have mud fights. We'd play war. We'd have teams. We'd make mud balls. Sometimes you might mix a little Pebble in there. We'd go play in the stream, go skinny dipping because Granny wouldn't let us have our swimming suits. So many fun things to do. So many acreages to cover.
Didn't do the mud so much. We had 26 acres out in the country, so there's enough woods that I could prowl around. And then the land that we had that was ours, it backed up to Tennessee Valley Authority had a buffer zone along the lake that was TVA land. And technically, if you were on TVA's land, it was public land, and you weren't trespassing, so you could go anywhere up and down the lake and not have anybody to yell at you or threaten to shoot you or anything. So use that to my advantage, too. Now, we had dirt clod fights. We didn't use the mud too much. The dirt clods were fun because they would explode when they hit you like a grenade.
Yeah. Yeah, and we do prep like days before. We get ours generally from around the cow pond, which is, now that I think of it, really disgusting. But yeah, we'd take the mud from the cow ponds and we'd make little mud balls and stuff like that. And sometimes you didn't get to use them all, so you'd come back a week or so later, depending on what routes you took and what adventures you were trying to purvey that week. I don't know. For me, it was a lot of fun. These days, kids go out for a second and come back in. I'm so bored. I didn't know what to do. Go ride your bike. Yeah. Go use your imagination. Do something. There's so much to do out there.
TV was limited. You only had 3 networks, and we only got 2 of those. One of them was on UHF, and it didn't come in very well. So basically 2 TV channels. Now, I did watch like reruns and things in the afternoon when I got home from school, but as soon as whatever I liked was over, then I was outside until, I was going to say still the street lights come on, but we didn't have any street lights when I lived there. When it got dark, anyway, it was time to at least come home and check in, have dinner. My parents weren't big sticklers for rules. If I missed my dinner, it'd be on the table for me. So there's times I'd come back in and eat, and then go back outside. I liked being outside. I liked being outside at night, just down the street, or down the road. There wasn't a street. It was an old country road. Just down the road, there was an old abandoned graveyard. And the kids that lived on the other side of that, further down the road, probably a couple miles away, we went in there and built like a tree fort in the graveyard.
What? That would be
Oh yeah,
awesome.
we were just fearless when it came to stuff like that. Didn't bother me. I've always loved the night.
Did you guys have anything like otherworldly happen in your cemetery tree fort?
Yeah, we would hear things. There was one time the way it was made, you had to climb up a ladder to go into the top of it, and that was the only way to get in. Then the downstairs, you had to go down a ladder that was inside this fort to get in the bottom. We heard something or somebody in the bottom, and we're going to sneak in there and get them. We go in, go down, nothing down there. So, but it was built. I mean, it was on top of graves, so never
That
saw anything there. But like I said, we heard things, and things would go missing from within the tree fort. Of course, we just blamed it on each other. There was three families that we all lived within a mile or two of each other, and that was when kids would ride their bikes down there and play in the graveyard, and we'd always blame it on the other kids. But who knows?
Yeah, we might have done that at my granny's, but the graveyard was too far away. Like the entrance to the road to get there was not too far away, but partially up that way was my Uncle Melvin's house. And I do remember as a kid, me and my little brother and my other brother, Greg, my older brother, walking up to my Uncle Melvin and Aunt Janie's house to visit her kids. And along the way, that's where I learned the trick. If you put a pebble in your mouth, like on your tongue or under your tongue, that'll like quench your thirst, because we were so thirsty. Like, even though it's humid South Arkansas, like not South Arkansas, but South Arkansas, in that area,
Gotcha.
which was actually northeast Arkansas. So humid, so hot, but you still get
Yeah.
really, really thirsty. Did you ever try the pebble under the
No,
tongue
I've
trick?
never tried that. I heard that, but there where we lived, we had seven natural springs that flowed out of the hillsides and into one bigger creek, and then that went into the lake, which was probably 300 feet away. So we weren't really supposed to drink out of the spring, but people did. Back before we lived there, people used to come there and get water. So
Hmm.
yeah, if I couldn't get to the hose to get a drink out of that, I have drank out of the branch before.
Yeah.
That might account for some things today. So
Yeah, playing at Granny's, like we stayed out all day and we would drink out of the stream, and it was above where the cows were. So the barn was here, and there'd be a fence that blocked that off, and then they had this certain area, but we'd go upstream through, like you said, the creeks, or we used to call it the crick, and
yeah.
that water was so good and so fresh, way better than Grandma's tap water. I tell you that for sure.
Oh yeah.
Whew.
Tap or well water.
Yeah,
Prior to that, and the well water was nasty. Tasted like sulfur.
yeah, with the bubbles in it, it was so bad. Yeah, not good. So, as far as your history goes with the paranormal, where did you get your start? What was your very first paranormal experience?
Well, the very first one was right there where I was talking about where I grew up. Our driveway was exactly 212 feet long. I know because I measured it later in life when I was doing BMX sprint racing from the garage to the street and the road and back. And I was out in the yard one day. I was probably almost 6 years old. I was born in October, Halloween baby. And one of the kids that lived farther down the road, a mile or two, I was waiting for him to get back so we could do something together. He was a year younger than me. So I'm hanging out in the yard, and that was all that we had cleared was part of the front yard. You could see to the road. Rest of it was heavily wooded. Um, and I'm out about halfway, so 100 and something feet. I see a car coming down the hill. There was an inverted T intersection there, two country roads. One went one direction into the lake. The other took you back out to the main highway, and then the one that came straight down the hill, that also went to the main highway, which was probably a couple of miles away. And I see a car coming down the hill. I thought it was my friend and his mom, so I started walking toward the street. I assumed he would get out. And every time I say street, I mean road. There was no sidewalks. There was no street lights or anything like that. It's just an old country road. Didn't even have a yellow line or anything on it. It was, every person to themselves when you drive on those roads. And so I saw the car come down the hill. It did stop at the stop sign. And about the time it stopped, I'm close enough now that I can see the person driving is not my friend's mom at all. It's a man that I didn't recognize the car either. And then all of a sudden, a little kid comes running out from behind the car. And I thought, is that my friend John? And then I realized, no, this is a little kid, like probably 2 years old. And he didn't get out of the car, no the doors or anything open. He came around from behind the car, and he came across kind of a catty corner angle right in front of the car. And I'm thinking, that kid's going to get run over because the guy driving can't see him over the top of the car. It was a big old Buick, and all this happened kind of at the same time. Well, the guy turns to the right. He never saw the kid. He never registered anything. Well, the kid runs across the road down into our yard. And if you've ever watched little kids that have just barely mastered the art of walking, they'll start running and then don't really know how to stop and they'll just fall down. Well, that's what this little boy did. He fell, and when he hit the ground, Tessa, he was gone. I mean, nothing, just, yeah. And I was probably within 60 feet of him at this point because I'd continued walking. I did not take my eyes off the spot. I didn't blink, but I hurried over there. There's nothing. There's no kid there, nothing I could have mistaken for a kid, no hole that a kid could fall in. And I looked. I mean, I looked around and I was just like, what was that? I mean, it didn't scare me so much as it piqued my curiosity. Like, I know that wasn't supposed to happen even at almost 6 years old. Little boys don't run across the road in front of a car and fall down in the yard and disappear. And that was the thing, really. I mean, I'd had some minor experiences prior to that. I'd seen some lights flying around in the house, some colored lights and things that nobody else could see. And that was probably 3 or 4 when that happened. And but yeah, that was the first major thing. That was the first full body apparition anyway. And I just, that's what started me on my quest to find out, what these things are that we see or experience that we can't explain, that there is no explanation for. I mean, was it a time slip? Was it a ghost? Who knows what it was?
Yeah, was it intelligent?
And,
was it residual? It makes you wonder. I
yeah,
don't know, it kind of makes me sad thinking about it. Like, this little ghost boy, when he fell, like, was that right before he fell in underneath whatever vehicle ran him over or whatnot, and that's why he
yeah.
disappeared? Or it
And
totally...
that was another thing I
Go
did
ahead.
years later. I researched that road. The road that happened on was named after my mom's family. They had a dairy farm there. My grandparents did and had for decades. So I knew everybody that lived on the road. I knew of them if they weren't a relative anyway. And no little kid had ever been killed on that road that anybody knew of. And as far as I know, no little kid has ever been killed on that road since then.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that it was something that was attached to that car. And since it came from around behind it, it was, I think, in the trunk of the car, even though the trunk didn't open, but it came from behind the car. So who knows? And I'd never seen that person driving that car. And this was out in the country. You knew everybody, usually by their vehicle.
Yeah, and a
And
lot of these families have been there forever, so they would know the
yeah,
history.
and didn't recognize the car, or nor the man driving it. And so the only thing that went down that way was there was another house on the left, a graveyard on the right, and then the road forked. Farther to the right, there was another house over there on the lake, and then the other, if you stayed on the main part of it, it went right down to the water. So occasionally we would get people that would come down there and just hang out to the lake. So, but it was unusual to see somebody that you didn't recognize, because even the community, you knew people within the community.
Yeah, and once you said graveyard right there, perhaps it was a kid from a
Could
graveyard.
be.
I don't know if you saw that video recently.
Which one's that?
Oh. They put up this camera because somebody kept messing with a grave, so they put up a game camera, and on this game camera they captured a little girl ghost, and she was messing around with this person's grave and kneeling down and kind of messing with things, not making a mess, but she looked like she was intrigued and messing with these flowers or this flag or this solar light, and then she ran back the other way and just kind of disappeared. And her grave was not too far from that one, but a bit farther than you would think. But yeah, they showed this video to the mother of the girl that they thought it was that passed away, and she's like, "Yes, that's my baby."
Wow.
To me, that's mind-blowing. So maybe that's where he came from. Like, he doesn't want to hang out in the graveyard. It's boring. I'm going to go play in the road, which we did as kids.
Well, the only thing about that theory that graveyard was old. I mean, those stones in there, the newest ones were from the 1800s, and some of them have been there so long you couldn't even read when they were from. And it was a small graveyard anyway, maybe a dozen, 20 tops graves
Mm-hmm.
in there. But this little boy that I saw, he was wearing modern clothing, modern for the time, modern for the 60s. That would have been about 1969 when that happened. He had on little blue shorts with suspenders, a white button-up shirt, a little blue, almost like baseball type cap, and white shoes. I mean, he was wearing nice clothes. He wasn't wearing play clothes. It was like Sunday clothes,
Mm-hmm.
but it was modern for that time. Now it might have been modern back as far as the 50s or something, but yeah, he didn't look like a kid from the 1800s or when they would have worked for that graveyard. But then I've got another story on that same area. I had a lot happen here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there were some kids that used to come out of the woods on the back end of our property, and I would play with them. They looked like farm kids. They wore blue jeans with the cuffs rolled up and flannel shirts tucked in, and they never talked. But they would mess around in the yard, and like I said, we played together, but we really didn't. I mean, there was interaction and stuff, but they never talked. So, and all of a sudden, you would hear like a bell, like a dinner bell, like ding, 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 and they would take off back through the woods. And then I'd see them the next time. Well, years later, I'd remembered that, and I asked my dad about it. I said, "Dad, when we lived down there at the Springs, who were those kids that used to come out of the woods that I played with?" And he said, "Oh, your imaginary friends." And I'm like, they weren't imaginary. I mean, we did on rope swings and stuff like that together. I mean, I saw them. They were just as corporal as I am. But I never thought about that. And I told him the direction that they came from. I would always see them coming through the woods from over the top of a hill there. And I said, well, what was over on the top of that other hill? Because I'd never been up that way. It's a real steep climb.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, that just on the other side of it, it goes down to the lake. But before the TVA had dammed up the Clinch River and made Mountain Hill Lake, there was another community back over there on the river. And he said that the only thing that was over there on the other side of that ridge, there was an old graveyard that was under water now, that was in the lake because it had been beside the river. So
That
that kind
amazes
of
me.
that freaked me out. And I didn't even think about that at the time. They didn't seem like ghosts or anything other than, I mean, I thought it was strange that they didn't talk, and then when they heard the bell, they would take off back through the woods.
Well, yeah, and
But
different
that was,
families have different rules and stuff, so you don't question it. You know, you have friends, you're grateful to play with them, so you won't
yeah,
question it because you don't want to scare them off. That's interesting. And it's interesting how many times that has happened. Like, we have that up the road here at Vallecito, that lake that's up there covered so much farmland, and so many people
yeah,
struggled so hard not to let go of that land. And the government just basically ripped them off. If they waited too long to sell it, they'd be like, well, we're
yeah.
just going to take it and you can move anyways.
Yeah, it was
But
the same.
there's,
My grandparents didn't want to sell their dairy farm, so they took what they could take anyway, the government did, and dammed the river up and left their dairy barn and silos sitting on, I think, a quarter of an acre. So, you know, the farm was all underwater, just the barn
mhm.
left, and they didn't sell, so they didn't get anything. Got to keep their
Yeah,
barn, but barn's useless when it's surrounded on three sides by water.
yeah, it is. And when I first moved to Colorado, I moved to Cortez, and that's where I saw the sign that said Navajo, and I was like, Uncle Bill, what's a Navajo? He's like, no, that's Navajo. But McPhee was also like on top of farmland and stuff, and like you said, all the structures were left there. They didn't tear them down and haul them out. They just left them there. So there's still
Yeah.
things underwater still
Yeah, this
today.
particular area in East Tennessee, there was all kinds of things down there. There was a park, there were houses and barns. There's down at the extreme end of it where you cross the bridge to go over into Oak Ridge, there was a drive-in theater down there along the edge of the river that's all underwater now.
I miss those. So as far as the cemetery, they did not move the bodies. They just covered it with water.
As far as I know, I never heard
Wow.
anything about relocating. And a lot of these were just like family plots, like
Hmm.
out in the country. A lot of people, if in their little community or in their little neighborhood, they'd all be related, and they'd just bury their folks right there. I mean, there may or may not have been a church at some of these. Otherwise, it was just I've found those though come across out in the woods before and maybe find a little plot with 3 or 4 graves in it. And if they're legible, they're usually the same name.
Now that you mention that, that reminds me also on the way to the cemetery where both my parents are buried, at my Aunt Janie and Uncle Melvin's house, we used to play hide and go seek. We used to play all over that property. You know how it was back in the day, play outside. When we drove by it this last time to go up to the cemetery where our parents are, me and my sister, there was actually a little graveyard in the corner of their yard right there by the road. We never saw it, never noticed it ever until this last time. I'm like, where the hell did this cemetery come from? And it was Civil War soldiers and like you said, older graves like that. Like, how did we not ever see this? Maybe something kept us away from that area. I don't know, but for me, it blew my mind. Like, where the hell did the cemetery come from?
Yeah. Well, that was like the one where we had the tree fort. A lot of people that hadn't grew up around there didn't even know there was a graveyard back in there. It was little copse of trees there. And if you didn't know it was there, weren't looking for it, I don't even think it showed up on maybe some of the older maps and things like the government maps, the county maps and stuff had it on there. But I remember taking people back there and like, I didn't know there was a graveyard here.
It was such a surprise. And, you know, my Uncle Melvin had died from cancer and, you know, the family separated and moved on and somebody else had purchased it. So I think these new owners found this gravesite and decided to cordon it off. And they actually put little flags on these graves of the soldiers and stuff, which, you know, really made my heart feel good because, you know, honoring these soldiers and remembering them because they had been forgotten for who knows how long.
Yeah. There's graveyards like that in the Smokies. You get up in Cades Cove and that part of the national park, the North Shore, Fontana Lake. There's all kinds of little grave sites back in there. And one that should be well known, but it's not. It's the little graveyard of the Confederate Cherokee. It's there's about 20 something Cherokee soldiers that fought on the Confederacy side buried in there, and about 100 more just scattered graves of their families. And that was common among the Cherokee. When they went to battle, they took their families with them. So a
Oh,
lot of them, you
wow.
know, the whole family, men, women, kids got wiped out. So that's kind of strange when there's a little crude arrowhead shaped marker that says something about it, and then you got to take a trail back in the woods, and then there it is. The grave of the soldiers, they're laid out in an orderly fashion, but the other ones, they're just higgledy-piggledy all over the place.
Yeah, they took time for the soldiers, but not for the Cherokee soldiers, or they did for
Or
the
no,
Cherokee
they did for
soldiers.
the Cherokee soldiers, but not their family. Their
They just
families are
kind
just
of piled
buried
them in.
wherever they could put them, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a lot of people so that's a really popular hiking area where you go past there, but I'd say 99% of the people that hike through there have no idea that there's a graveyard like that there. And particularly out in the country or when you get close to National Park up there, there's a lot of little graveyards like that. One of the places where my family lived after they moved out of Cades Cove, it's near Ramsey, Tennessee. There's a little graveyard there. The community was known as Goose Paddle. I have no idea where that came from, but it was a real place at one
Could be
time.
name of a chief or something.
Chief Goose Paddle.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
heard
Sounds
Chief Dragon Canoe. Like, there's so many different names out there.
but that's where a lot of my far relatives, like my grandmother's grandmother, and some of them are buried at Goose Paddle. Last time I was up there, that's been about 20 years ago, and it was in somebody's cow pasture now. And you had to like go to the guy's house and knock on the door and say, "Hey, I want to go in there and go to the graveyard." I mean, it's grown up. It's in the woods. People don't even know it's there.
Yeah.
And my brother and I had gone up there probably in the late 90s. That was the last time I was there. Yeah, I mean, they're still there, but from the road, you'd have no idea that there's a graveyard back in there. There's probably 50, 75 people buried back there.
That is so amazing to me. And even our family plot, which every time I used to go, it was like an adventure. Every time I'd go to see my mom before my dad passed, I'd get lost. Even after my dad was buried there, I'd always take a wrong turn and go somewhere. So like you said, you got to stop and say, "Hey, is it okay? I go over here." So because some people will shoot you if you trespass. They don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
You let them know you're going to go to see the cemetery and honor these people and clean up perhaps or whatever. But yeah, it was kind of like an adventure every time until I learned, what the marker was. And there was a 420 in there. So it was easy to remember for me.
Yeah, so you got mile 420 behind you there on the wall. So that
Yeah. It's
must be an
Colorado
important
thing.
number. Hey, it's
Yeah.
like that here in Oregon too. So
Yeah, a lot of these mile markers have been stolen not only in Colorado but Arizona. Every time I go see my mom and sister down in Phoenix, I drive past this mile marker. And when I used to do SOR on the weekends, Dave's like, "Hey, you can't say mile marker 420 on the show." So I said mile marker 419 and a half, and they actually have that there. And so I was kind of tempted one time. I'm like, I think I might stop and take a picture of that sign and get it printed or something. But it was gone. Somebody else stole it for some apparent reason. That's why they quit making the 420 signs, because everybody kept stealing them. But I purchased this
yeah,
one for $25 at a dispensary in Grand Junction. So I did not steal it, even though that would be funner, but yeah.
it was like in New Mexico and I think some other places out west there. There used to be a highway, U.S. Route 666,
I used to live on
and
that.
they finally had to change the name of the highway to keep people from stealing the signs.
Yeah, I lived right off Highway 666. They changed it to 160, I believe. It
Yeah,
was
I
turned to
think that's right.
160. And so I was right off the road from there on Elm Street, which was another coincidence for me because I loved horror movies, and I'm like, oh, Nightmare on Elm Street, right by Highway 666. But right between us and the highway was this hotel called the Rockaway Hotel, and this lady actually got severely murdered, like beat to death, like horribly. So we were all on pins and needles for a while. I felt so bad for her. I wonder if they ever found the guy. I don't know. I want to look back into it. But yeah, there were so many crazy things that happened in that area. And I don't know if things have changed since they changed the name, besides signs not being stolen. I wonder if activity is cut down or if it really doesn't matter because of the property or the land.
Yeah, I think it's whatever's there because that same highway where it goes through four corners there, and where you have all those Navajo legends, and you've got skinwalkers and dogman and stuff out there now, and Wendigo, and the Skinwalker Ranch is not too far in
Yeah.
that direction going north. So I think there's cursed places out there. There's places that certain tribes won't go, and then certain places that other tribes will go a little bit into it, but not too far, and then other tribes just don't seem to care. So I don't know. But there was supposedly a fight between the Navajo and somebody else. I can't
The
remember what the
Utes.
other tribe. Yeah, it was the Utes, and they flung all kinds of curses back and forth at each other. Their shaman
Well,
or their medicine men, and that's supposedly where a lot of that activity comes from.
yeah, and before those guys even, there was the Anasazi, and they just disappeared. Just like there was a UFO abduction, like they came down, took the whole tribe, like all the pottery, all the food, everything was just left in place as if they were just taken away. But I learned recently these Anasazi were actually cannibals and very, very scary, scary people. But the Navajo are actually called the Dene, the Utes, as an insult, and they told the government this too. This tribe is called the Navajo. So in the books they're called Navajo, but their actual name is the Dene. They're the Dene people. So Navajo is an insult. It actually means thief, which they weren't the thieves. The Utes came in and stole their land, but then they, put it on them. Drama in the four corners.
Fascinating. I love that part of the country out there. You've got so much mystery out there. I've been to Sedona. There's something weird there. Superstition Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
That whole place is just creepy. And that's another one of those where some tribes avoid it. Some will go certain places, and they're just I don't know. I've experienced things there, Tessa, where like rocks that you can't take a picture of and things like that. That if you take a picture, it doesn't show up in the picture. And
So
there's
you
been all
have been
kinds
to
of
the
unsolved.
Superstition Mountains?
Yeah, yeah. Prowling around out there, thought I might find the lost Dutchman mine. But it's weird out there. There's been a lot of unexplained murders. There's some beheadings there in the Superstition Mountains where they found the body and never found the head. And that sort of thing. So it's not necessarily a place to go, for a family vacation or anything, but there's some weird energy out there.
It's funny because I ain't scared of nothing. That's what my 5, almost 6-year-old says. I ain't scared of nothing. But I'm generally not afraid of the paranormal and stuff. And my sister's like, hey, what do you think about going and hiking in the Superstition Mountains? I'm like, sounds fun, but I don't know. I got to think it over. I got a plan for this trip. I need to buy a beacon to where if I go missing, I could press a button and they could find me, whether it's on Earth or in some freaking atmosphere out there.
Or they just find the beacon.
Right? All your earthly belongings. See? Now you have a point. I could have
Here's a
spent thousands
backpack
of
and a
dollars for
beacon,
nothing.
but we don't know where Tessa went to. But, we cover those kind of disappearances and stuff on Missing Persons and Mysteries. And it's just, I don't know if it's more prevalent. It seems to be growing, but maybe our world's just gotten smaller and the reporting's gotten better and stuff, and you hear more about it because there's been unexplained disappearances going back. I mean, I've found them from the 1700s, the 1800s, things like that. But it seems to happen a lot more. Remember, I think it was last year out here in just across the river in Washington State, there was like 5 people went missing. I think it's on Mount Rainier within just a few days of each other.
Wow.
I think that was in 2020. I covered so many of these cases, they all kind of jumbled together in my head after a while, and
I know you do so much. I don't even know how you keep all your stuff straight. Like for me,
I
I'm
don't.
like looking at a notebook. But like you're saying, like, is it better reporting? Is it because we have the internet and we can share collectively? Like used to be, it'd be in a small town or county or a certain area. It wouldn't go far. But now that we have the internet, it's everywhere. Depending on what kind of case it is. Some cases we never hear about until we had one here in Durango that we didn't hear about this missing fella. And I believe he was a Dene individual. For 2 months. They didn't even put it in the news for 2 months, and he'd been dead that whole time because he accidentally fell down a hill. Had they reported it in the first part, like the person that saw him on their cam on their house would have said, hey, I saw him walk by my house and he was going this direction. Even though they had the cadaver dogs and everything, they couldn't find him until that person said he was walking this way, and then they found him.
Yeah, well, and I don't know what it is other than just business as usual. But the First Nations people still get the shitty end of the stick. I hope I can say that and not get you in trouble.
Yes, this is an adult party. Feel free to speak freely.
Well, they still get the shitty end of the stick on everything. There's so many First Nations people that are missing that you never hear anything about. I was doing some research in the Great Lakes area. There's over 10,000 women and girls over there that missing and unaccounted for.
Yeah.
And there's some movements within the community to try to draw attention to it. I can't remember the name of the organization, like No More Lost Sisters or something like that, that they're trying to spread.
Indigenous women, I think it is, or something like that.
Yeah.
Lost Sisters. And it's all over the place, especially like you're saying with tribes or First Nations people. Some people call them Native Americans. I like the term First Nations people like the Canadians use. For me, that's more respectful. But it is. So it's too. Like, because they're women, it's like swept under the rug. Let's not talk about it.
Yeah. And then you have the same thing south of the border in Mexico where they find these mass graves of people that are out in the desert that have just been murdered and thrown away. I mean, is that a serial killer? Is that the government? Is that the drug cartels? I mean, down there, it could be any one of the above. Yeah, but in the Great Lakes area, it could be serial killers. There's been several up there, but there's a lot of human trafficking and things that goes on up there, too, because it's the maritime activities up there. It's easy to, I guess, get in and snatch people and get away with them on a boat, especially a cargo vessel or something like that. And you could pack a lot of people into one of those shipping containers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those have been known to be left behind, and all those people die because nobody ever came for them. It's very sad what happens to these people. It's like no respect for life. If I was an individual in that ring, I would do everything in my power to get these people out of there, even if I got caught. Like, for me, it'd be worth it to do that instead
just
of
open the doors
sleep.
And let them go. You're on your own, scatter, good luck. Go that way.
You're welcome. Have a great day. Here's a pack of water. I hope you guys share equally, but
But
man, it's so sad.
so yeah, it's just, and that's the thing, especially with the national parks and national forests and those that go missing there. It could be any one of a number of things. There's so many different theories. Well, it's serial killers. No, it's UFO abductions. No, it's Bigfoot. No, it's this predator type creature, the translucent humanoid.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's
The
just people
predator.
that want to end it all and go out in the woods. But whatever it is, it's 100% effective. I mean, it doesn't leave traces. It doesn't leave. Because there are people that have absolutely vanished within just, I mean, literally like going around the bend in the trail ahead of their group, and they're never seen again. They don't find anything. They don't find their belongings. They don't find their
Mm-hmm.
clothing. They don't find
A trail, nothing.
any blood or forensic evidence, tracks. The dogs can't pick up a scent. That's not normal. That's not anything of this earth. If you can figure out a way to go out in the woods and take your own life and not leave any trace behind, doesn't happen. Or a lot of people claim, oh well, it's predation. You know, there's animals out there. Well, yeah, there are things that will eat you. There are things that will
Yeah.
kill you and eat you. But I've seen, not with a human, but I've seen where one big animal has attacked a smaller animal. The leaves, the ground cover will be disturbed. There's
You'll
blood.
see
There's broken
evidence. Yeah.
branches. Yeah, there's fur
A
off the
struggle.
tail of whatever it was trying to eat. Yeah. So anything, even a big cat, if it jumps down and takes a human, there's going to be blood evidence. There's going to be, it doesn't eat your clothes. Now, a lot of times a big cat will stash its food up in a tree
Mm-hmm.
after it's made a kill. So I don't know. Maybe they need to walk around in the woods and look up more for lost bodies. But then a lot of times when they do find these people that have been missing, sometimes for months, they typically tend to be found in areas that have already been searched, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
many times, and the
Yes.
bodies will only appear to have been there a few days when the person may have been missing for weeks. Now, what's up with that? It's almost like a portal or something opens up and swallows them and then later spits them back out. Now
Could be those
that's
damn Allens.
yeah. Now that's I can't remember the tribe. I think it's the Algonquins in New England. They have a legend that there's rocks in the mountains there that can open up, swallow people, close back, and then it spits you out later. Well, a lot of the people, when they have found them deceased, they find them in a boulder field, and they look like they've been dropped from a considerable height, even though there's no height
Ew.
to fall from. But
That's
if you think about that,
terrible.
if one of those boulders opened up, swallowed you, crushed you, and then spit you back out, you'd be pretty messed up. You might
Yeah, you
look
look
like
like
you'd
you were
fallen from a
dropped.
considerable height. Yeah.
Right?
So, and that's some of the other theories that the Native American legends. You know, you have the Pukwudgies and the Fey folk, the Elementals. There's people that claim that's what's to blame. And if you look into those stories historically, particularly from Europe, England, and Ireland in particular, there's stories of the fairies taking people.
Yeah, and they're not as
And, you
nice
know, a
and
lot of
sweet as
people
you might
just
think.
dismiss that, but it's something that's in every culture, more or less. They have the little people of some sort, and it's not like, you know, Tinkerbell with the fairy dust. They're
Uh-uh.
evil, mean little beings that don't like humans at all. And
Yeah.
different types of them steal children. And then you have changelings, which are half fairy, half human little people. It's fascinating to think about. It's one of those things that there's just, like I said, the more you think about it, the more questions you have. There's not
Yeah.
going to be any answers. It boggles the mind.
It does
So
boggle my
that's
mind.
that's kind of stuff I think about when I'm up at night and don't have anything to do.
Right? You don't have a show to do. Like, when do you not have a show to do? Do you ever sleep? No. But as far as the fairy, like, a lot of people think of fairies like Tinkerbell. They're so sweet, so cute. I've heard stories, particularly from this woman in northern Colorado. She contacted me, and she was actually on the after party a couple times, and she could talk for hours talking about all the experiences she had with Bigfoot and fairies. And she was talking about them working together, and I was like, well, I can see that, like fairies being the brain, Bigfoot being the brawn, even though I don't think Bigfoot is stupid, but I think fairies might be a little smarter. So, you know, they're working together, trying to collaborate, get something done. they're not the nicest. Like, sometimes they might have good intentions, and a lot of times I don't think they do. I think they're just trying to survive and get those sparkly cool things inside the house and other things,
They're tricksters. They're pranksters. They will screw you on any deal you make with the fairies. We've got 3 videos up on missing persons and mysteries about the missing in the Fae, and that's one of the things that we found during research. Jim and Jade wrote those. And it's just that if a fairy can trick you, screw you out of something, they will. That you can't make any kind of deal with any of the fae folk or any of the elementals that you don't end up paying dearly for it, even though you think you got a good deal.
Yeah, and
there's places in the Nordic regions where they'll build a highway around an outcropping of rocks because they don't want to disturb the trolls that live in there. I mean, that's real. That's not just some made-up thing that they tell the tourists. That's a real story. They'll build a road around the rocks. So
it's pretty interesting how they do that, but they'll deny it till the end. There's only a few states that admit that Bigfoot or Sasquatch, whatever they may name it, is in their actual federal book of the state, pertaining to different animals and such that are protected. I think it's Washington State. I think it was Texas,
yeah,
too,
there's
but
some
I know
states
Texas
where
has a
it's
thing
protected. And then just recently, one state passed a thing where you can actually hunt Bigfoot, that they're legal to hunt. I don't know what the limit is. I would think 1. But yeah, that's sad to me. I hope that if they ever do find one, it's already deceased, or they at least kill it. Because can you imagine if they took one alive, what a miserable existence that would be for a creature that's that good at being in the woods. It's going to be in a cage or in a lab, and it's going to be poked and prodded and have blood drawn and studied and all this. So I hope they either find one that's already deceased or they go ahead and kill it, as sad as that sounds.
Yeah.
But I would want them to take one alive.
That's the weird thing, too, because they say they've never found remains. I don't know if they do burials like Native American burials, or they do something else. Are they intergalactic, or some people think that they go through portals and they can jump or whatever. I just think they're really good at what they do, and they've been doing it for a long time. But I do think they're more human than anything. So to open up a hunting season on them, for me, is very disheartening. Like,
yeah, I think it was done tongue in cheek, and probably just someplace that did it as a tourist thing. But it's still, I don't think it's the right kind of thing to do. Especially if we don't even know what it is or where it's from or what it's capable of or anything. We don't want to say it's okay to kill them. What if somebody shoots one and then it pisses, all the rest of them off, and they wage war on humans in that area? The Bigfoot War of 2021, that sounds frightening to think about.
You should copyright that. It could happen.
It'd be my first paranormal fiction book.
That would be a good one. I would read that. I don't know. I just keep thinking, like, hasn't anybody seen Harry and the Hendersons? Do you not have a heart? Like, could you really do that?
Yeah.
And I know they can be scary when you're out in the woods and you're encroaching on their territory. Just stay out of there. Don't go there. But there are times that little kids and stuff have gone missing and been found in the middle of a swamp. Their clothes are perfectly dried, never looked like they were wet at all, like holding onto a post or whatever. Even I heard a story about a Bigfoot that was kind of like a shapeshifter. And this one was kind of weird to me. Like, he called it Other Grandma, because at first it looked like his grandma. Then he realized it wasn't, and she was meaner than his other grandma.
That was on Mount Shasta. That was Robot Grandma.
Robot Grandma.
And she tried to get him to defecate on a piece of paper, and he wouldn't do it. And that's when he figured out that it wasn't his real grandma. And she's like, well, okay, if you're not going to cooperate, I'm just going to take you back. She took him back, put him on the trail, and that's where he was found. And then it was days later. He said, he was talking to his grandma, and he said, I like you better than the other grandma. And she thought he meant his maternal grandmother. Yeah. And he's like, oh, you don't like Nanny, whatever her name was? He's like, no, I'm talking about the other grandmother, the robot grandmother. And then he proceeds to tell this tale. He's like, remember when I was lost in the woods? He said, well, you came and got me, but it wasn't you. It was a robot. And you took me into a cave, and he talked about there was like rusty weapons and cobwebs and piles of skulls and stuff in there. it was a lot for a 5 or 6 year old kid to just make up wholesale. Because
Yeah.
his grandmother, upon hearing this, contacted her son, his father, and said, "What have you been letting him watch?" And they're like, "He doesn't watch anything like that." And then she had like a flashback that she had been camping in the same area, I think like the previous year. And she had awakened one morning out of her tent, no idea that she had ever left her tent, face down on the ground, and she had 2 puncture marks in the back of her neck. Same area that they had gone camping in. Now, what's that all about? There's some weird stuff on Mount Shasta. I've spent some time up there too. You've got the City of Gold. You've got the Lost City there. There's tunnels through there. There's robots. There's ascended masters. There's Lemurians. There's UFOs. There's Bigfoot. There's the spirit of Saint Germain that's been encountered on the mountain. And then that whole little town right there in the shadow of it, Weed, California, which may be aptly named. They still have
There's so many
reading
missing
rooms.
things going on there too. It's bad.
Yeah, it's one of those strange places, and I can't remember the name of the guy that supposedly met Saint Germain there, but he started a church that was huge at one time, had millions of followers, and it dwindled off after the guy died because he claimed to be immortal. But they still have one of the reading rooms there in Weed, in the little downtown area of whatever religion it was. But definitely a strange energy there. There's something going on there. And that's not too far if you go on up Interstate 5 there, I-5, and you go across into Oregon. There's the Oregon Vortex down there in southern Oregon, and then right along there. It's almost like following a ley line or something. Crater
Yeah, I was
Lake.
about to say that, like the, combination of ley lines intersecting.
Yep. Crater Lake, all kinds of missing young men there, mainly in their teens and 20s, that they've never found. And again, Crater Lake is a weird place. If you've ever been there, that's some of the clearest water you'll ever see.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a little island out in the middle of it that they call Wizard Island. I mean, it's just a lot of times I found that these places that have a weird name, whether a wizard or Diablo or devil
Pretty weird.
or something, there's a reason for that. That
Yeah.
didn't. I mean, it could go either way. You could name it something like that and then cause things to happen. Usually it's the other way around, that Native Americans gave it those kind of names because there was some bad juju there and stuff that you didn't want to mess with.
Yeah, it's like, how many Devil's Creeks or Devil's Rivers or whatever are there throughout the United States? That's a good search that we could do on this break, because we do have to go to our first musical break. On this break, we have Miss McKaylen Hay, and she is from Ontario, Canada, and she's going to be singing Devil You Know, Close, Nothing But Blood, and Collapse. And then we have Fred Johnson III, who is my favorite. If you guys haven't heard him before, I'm surprised because I play him a lot. But thank you again, Steve. We will get back to this shortly. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this musical break.
Saw you for the first time in a while. You seemed so surprised. I worked out a smile. 'Cause I've grown and I've changed. Yeah, we went separate ways. How come we're both back here? 'Cause you pushed me away, had my life rearranged, but still we're both back here. Close to me, I want you close to me. I can see that you wanted me. Follow me.
instead.